It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us first begin with the headlines. Typhoon Chaba, the strongest tropical storm to hit Korea in more than a decade, lets its presence be known down south, taking lives, destroying property, and disrupting transportation. Front and center at the parliamentary audit are questions about two foundations that raised a whopping $65 million in just a couple of months. Korea Sale FESTA is proving most successful. It's luring bargain hunters from here and abroad and giving retailers double-digit jumps in sales. Typhoon Chaba, the strongest storm Korea has seen in more than a decade, has caused some major damage along the country's southern coast. We turn to our Kim Ji-yeon for the latest. Ji-yeon, I understand we're getting some updates on lives lost because of the natural disaster.
Well, Daniel, what we know so far is that the typhoon has claimed 4 lives, including an elderly woman who fell from the roof of her house and a firefighter who was on duty. It's caused a number of accidents as well, including a crane at a construction site in Busan that collapsed in the wind. Not far away in the city of Ulsan, flooding halted production at the Hyundai motor factory, and a flash flood advisory has been issued. Residents downstream from a dam on the Taewagang River were forced to evacuate so the dam could release water to prevent further flooding. The General Insurance Association of Korea says damages incurred from Typhoon Chaba are estimated at nearly $9.3 million so far, as more than 950 automobiles were reported to have been submerged and some 210,000 households have experienced power cuts. Fortunately, the typhoon is weakening and transportation is up and running again in some areas, including the KTX express trains on the Gyeongbu line. Flights into and out of Busan, Gimhae, and Jeju are now back on schedule as well. However, sea routes for passenger ships and fishing boats are still under restrictions in these areas due to safety reasons. The typhoon is now over the East Sea and is expected to arrive in Japan by Thursday morning. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Jen, thank you for those updates. Moving on, Korea's parliament is back on track for a second day after a week of inactivity sparked by ruling Saenuri Party boycott. Today, lawmakers continue with their regular audit of the government. For more on the main talking points, here's our Park Ji-won.
Wednesday's parliamentary audit session was given over to a series of corruption allegations surrounding the Mir and K-Sports foundations and the government's role in approving their establishment. Opposition lawmakers grilled officials from the related government agencies to get to the bottom of how the two relatively new foundations could have raised about $65 million in donations in just about a month or two after their launch. The contributions were known to have come from several of the country's major conglomerates, but it's not known if there were any favors exchanged in the course of the foundation's establishment. The main opposition Minju Party vowed to dig deeper into the allegations, pledging to keep investigating even after the audit wraps up on the 19th. The opposition parties also submitted a motion to the Parliament Secretariat Wednesday afternoon requesting an investigation by a special prosecutor into the case of an activist who died recently. The man had been in a coma for several months after having been knocked down by a police water cannon during an anti-government protest last November. The opposition parties are hoping to discover whether the police use of the water cannon was excessive or illegal and lay to rest any remaining controversies over the case. The proposal needs to win a parliamentary majority to succeed. If approved, the investigation could start sometime after the audit is finished. Meanwhile, ruling Saenuri Party leader Lee Jung-hyun, who's in the hospital after a week-long hunger strike sparked by a feud over the assembly speaker, is reportedly recovering quickly and could return to work as soon as next week. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The Korean economy was also under the microscope at the audit. The finance ministry said much needs to be addressed in order to secure stronger growth. Shin Se-min has the details.
A diagnosis that continuous fluctuations in Korea's economic indicators may signal the country's economy is not on a stable path to recovery. According to a report submitted to the National Assembly for audit, the Finance Ministry said the country's economy is facing weak recovery momentum amid looming uncertainties at home and abroad, further weighed down by an unpredictable local financial market. Monthly figures also support that statement. Korea's exports dropped nearly 6% on year in September, backtracking from a long-awaited improvement the month before. The country's August current account surplus also fell to its lowest in the past 4 months. On the heels of dismal data, the Finance Ministry said it plans to continue with its expansionary fiscal policy to prop up the local economy after injecting an extra budget worth nearly $10 billion. A nationwide shopping festival dubbed Korea Sale FESTA, which is currently underway, is also aimed at bolstering sagging consumer sentiment. To improve the country's growth capacity, the government rolled out detailed guidelines to enhance competitiveness in the sectors of steel and petrochemicals. It'll also push forward with its ongoing corporate restructuring drive in the shipping and shipbuilding industries. In terms of the heavy household debt burden that zipped past $1.1 trillion as of the end of the second quarter, Korea's top economic policymaker was not too pessimistic. During the audit session, Finance Minister Yoo Il-ho said that although the size of household debt may be significant, quality-wise, it's not that bad. But he added that the ministry is working to devise additional means to curb the debt figures, as tighter control on the loan-to-value and debt-to-income ratios does not seem to be sufficient in tackling further debt growth. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense minister was grilled by lawmakers as part of the audit. The focus was on North Korea's provocations and the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. Kim Hyun-bin tells us more.
Korea's parliamentary audit moved on to the Ministry of National Defense on Wednesday, where lawmakers mostly focused on the deployment of the U.S. Advanced Missile Defense System, THAAD, to the Korean Peninsula. Defense Minister Han Min-gu was asked why the Lotte Sky Hill golf course was chosen to host the THAAD battery. He said it was selected after a thorough consideration of its operational interoperability, infrastructure, as well as THAAD's operational capabilities, among other factors. And the golf course site in Seongju County was deemed most suitable. The defense minister announced his decision on the location last week, some 2.5 months after Seoul and Washington announced their original pick, the Seongsan anti-aircraft missile base in Seongju. That choice was strongly protested by local residents. Minister Han said the decision on THAAD's location is final. The system is scheduled to be deployed before the end of next year, with Seoul and Washington to iron out the details during the annual security consultative meeting later this month in Washington, D.C. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Another possible high-profile defection from North Korea, an official who played a key role in looking after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's health, reportedly defected last month. If confirmed, it will be the latest in a series of high-profile defections from the regime. Connie Kim reports.
A North Korean official stationed in Beijing has reportedly defected with his family. If confirmed, it would potentially provide further evidence of the growing instability within the regime. A source familiar with North Korea said the official from the Public Health Ministry was responsible for purchasing medicine and medical equipment used for Kim Jong-un, his family, and senior officials at the North's representative office in Beijing. The official reportedly fled with his wife and daughter late last month. Early reports on Wednesday seem to suggest the official asked to defect to Japan, but Japan's foreign ministry has denied the news, saying it does not know of a North Korean hoping to seek asylum in the country. The source also said there is a need for further investigation into reports of the defection of another official from the same Beijing office. South Korea's Unification Ministry said it cannot confirm either of the defections. If confirmed, however, the defections would be surprising, especially given North Korea's close ties to China. In addition, there is growing speculation about how the officials could have escaped as Pyongyang installed a massive intelligence corps in China and Russia to keep tabs on officials stationed abroad after the defection of a North Korean diplomat from the UK over the summer. The presidential office of Cheongwade said it is monitoring the situation, considering the position of the defector in question. The reports of the defections have garnered even more attention after South Korean President Park Geun-hye, during a recent speech, invited ordinary North Koreans to make the journey south and find new hope. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Representatives of local overseas Korean communities are in Seoul for the annual celebration of World Korean Day. Our Song Ji-sun has more on the day designed to instill national pride and create a sense of unity among Koreans everywhere.
It's the 10th World Korean Day, an occasion to celebrate and encourage millions of Koreans living overseas. At the annual gathering, President Park Geun-hye showed her appreciation for the efforts of the more than 7 million Koreans who live in countries across the globe and pledged to help the country realize its potential through reforms and her creative economy drive.
세계 경제가 갈수록 촘촘하게 연결되어 가는 상황에서 동포 여러분과의 협력은 우리 경제에도 무척 큰 힘이 되는 만큼 조국의 더 큰 발전을 위해 힘을 모아주시기 바랍니다. 특히 우수한 역량을 갖춘 우리 청년들이 세계를 무대로 도전하고 꿈을 이루어 나갈 수 있도록 지혜와 경험을 나눠주시고 많은 기회를 열어주실 것을 부탁드립니다.
Saying that North Korea's obsession with its nuclear program will only lead to its own self-destruction, President Park said unification will enable overseas Koreans to freely travel across the peninsula and find long-lost family members separated by the war.
앞으로도 정부는 북한의 도발에 맞서 안보를 더욱 튼튼히 해 나가면서 동시에 평화 통일을 이루기 위한 노력을 멈추지 않을 것입니다. 북한 핵의 위협이 사라지고 평화 통일의 문이 열리면 한반도에 살고 있는 우리들뿐만 아니라 720만 재외동포 여러분과 세계 각국에도 새로운 행복과 번영의 기회가 열리게 될 것입니다.
President Park asked the overseas Korean to play the role of independent diplomats and promote Seoul's North Korea policy while garnering international support for the denuclearization of the peninsula. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
The Korea Sale Festa is drawing shoppers from in and out of the country. Retailers are seeing a huge boost in sales as it overlaps with Korea's National Foundation Day and China's Golden Week holiday. Kim Hae-sung lists how this event stands out from its predecessors.
Korean retailers are enjoying a double-digit boost in sales as tourists and domestic consumers hunt for bargains during the nation's biggest shopping event, the Korea Sale Festa. According to the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy, duty-free shops saw the biggest jump in sales to $150 million. That's a 22% increase compared to the first 5 days of the shopping event last year. Korean department stores and large supermarket chains also saw their on-year sales surge 15% and 10% respectively. This year, 249 retailers and manufacturers, nearly 3 times the number from last year, are providing discounts in over 50,000 stores across the country. The Korea Sale Festa kicked off on Thursday, and while the sales event ends Sunday, the festivities and related cultural events will extend through the end of the month. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Korea's consumer prices logged the fastest pace of growth in 7 months, 1.2 rise to be exact. Statistics Korea says it's also the first time in 5 months that prices have risen by more than 1%. The new figures could cool fears over possible deflation. Prices of agricultural and livestock products shot up over 10%, driving up prices overall. The record-breaking heat wave that limited farming production is seen as the key contributing factor. Core inflation, which excludes volatile oil and food prices, rose 1.8% on year. The world's first ever legally binding climate deal will soon enter into force as EU member countries have given the green light to ratify the Paris Climate Agreement. For more on the long overdue progress, we turn to our Oh Soo-young.
The Paris Climate Agreement is poised to take effect as soon as next month, after the 28 member countries of the European Union voted Tuesday to ratify the deal as a bloc.
Our vote opens the way to ensuring that the whole agreement can achieve the necessary threshold figure so as to come into worldwide implementation.
Aiming to tackle global warming and the impacts of climate change, the landmark deal, the first ever universal and legally binding climate agreement, was signed in December of last year by 195 UN member states. The main goal is to keep the rise of global temperatures to 2 degrees Celsius and reduce it to 1.5 degrees Celsius. It also aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible with carbon reduction goals specified by each member state, and finance the progress by collecting funds from developed countries. The United States and China, who together account for roughly 40% of global carbon emissions, signed on to the deal early last month. During the UN General Assembly's annual debate in mid-September, more than 30 countries, including Brazil and India, agreed to adopt the agreement upon the urging of Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon. With the EU members each ratifying the agreement, making up 12% of global emissions, the deal will pass the remaining threshold to enter into effect in 30 days, possibly before the annual climate conference takes place on November 17th in Morocco. During the week-long talks, world leaders are expected to discuss the implementation of the Paris Agreement, along with each country's specific goals to reduce emissions. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Korea has been named the council member at the International Civil Aviation Organization, or ICAO, for a 6th straight term. The ICAO is the UN body that sets standards and practices for the international aviation industry. Its members consult on aviation policy so that the industry grows in a safe and orderly way. According to the Foreign Ministry, Korea will serve another 3-year term on the body's council, having received 146 votes from the 172 countries taking part in the ICAO's assembly underway in Montreal, Canada. Korea's re-election solidifies the country's status as a leader in aviation. And that's all from us for now. To our viewers around the world, thank you for watching. If you're tuning in from Korea, stick around for more domestic news updates.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Devin Whiting with your in-depth domestic news. Hyundai Motor's labor union is threatening to expand its walkout to include workers from its affiliates, which would involve some 98,000 workers. And adding to the labor unrest, the National Truckers Union has announced that it will join striking railway workers next week. Lee Min-young has this report.
Hyundai Motor's labor union has warned the government that it will expand its general strike if the government invokes an emergency arbitration mechanism that would force workers back onto the job. The union says the expanded walkout would include workers from the group's affiliates, including Kia Motors, amounting to some 98,000 workers. This comes after Labor Minister Lee Ki-kwon said last week that the government would consider taking emergency measures if the union and management failed to reach an agreement to end the strike.
Considering that the strike is seriously hurting our economy, jobs, and car parts subcontractors, we will take all necessary measures to bring the strike to an end.
Under current law, the government has the authority to suspend a walkout if it's deemed necessary, especially if it affects the daily lives of the general public and jeopardizes the economy. If the government triggers the mechanism, the workers will have to suspend the strike for 30 days, and the government would step in to mediate. Adding fuel to the fire, the truckers' union announced Wednesday that it will join an ongoing strike by the Korean Railway Workers Union starting next Monday, raising fears of major logistics disruptions. The union members are demanding the government scrap a plan announced in August to revise freight transportation regulations. They are especially concerned about a change that would cut the number of trucking contracts while also making it easier for people to obtain trucking licenses, which they worry would severely reduce their income or lead to layoffs. The government denounced the decision, calling it selfish amid the nation's economic difficulties. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Some welcome news for Korean companies making memory chips. The price of NAND flash memory is set to soar by up to 15% this quarter. That's according to market watchers DRAMeXchange, who attribute the expected price rise to recent high demand from smartphone manufacturers such as Apple and Huawei. which chip makers have been straining to keep up with. DRAM memory prices are also expected to they rose by 7% in September and are expected to keep rising in the fourth quarter. The forecast shows the biggest price increase for DRAM in 2 years. Workers employed by the city of Seoul will see a 15% rise in their hourly pay next year under the city's living wage system. Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon announced the wage hike today at an event dubbed Seoul City Living Wage Day. The plan will raise hourly pay to 8,197 won, or about $7.40. That's 27% higher than the national minimum wage set by the government, which stands at a little over $6. The living wage will apply not only to those employed directly by the city, but also to anyone working for an institution financially supported by the city government. Those are some of the stories we're following right now. Thanks for watching. More to come at 8 p.m. Korea time. Bye for now.